Welcome to the Global Gender Summit. I wish to welcome all participants, ministers and leaders from around the world to this event organized by the African Development Bank, together with all sister multilateral development banks and hosted by the government of Rwanda. This is the first time that the Global Gender Summit is being held in Africa. For the Global Gender Summit, we must focus on how to fast-track economic, social, and political opportunities for women and girls. A smarter world must invest in women and girls. Let's be smart. Let's be wise. Women are the best investments any society can make. When they earn, they spend 90% of their income on their households, including their husbands. Women pay back on their loans an overwhelming 90%. Smart banks will lend to women.
Let's remember that this is a gender summit. That means all of us are concerned, not just half of us. Being a man in a position of leadership at any level means never having to think about your gender. But being a woman leader means always having to think about how gender impacts your work. I think it is past time for men to become much more conscious of gender so that women can afford to enjoy the same freedom to just get on with the business that men take for granted.
The fourth edition of the Global Gender Summit in Kigali explores ways to unpack constraints to gender equality. As the summit puts the spotlight on women, Africa's only female president and other prominent African women lend their voice on how to bridge the gender gaps that exist on the continent.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, sustainable socioeconomic growth can only be achieved when everyone's full contribution to the market economy is given its rightful value, but also when access to health, education, profitable opportunities, and financial inclusion are no longer the privilege of a selected few.
If it was appointing female representatives to higher positions, then I think we could have done it long ago. But there is this gap that we have to fill. We have to have women filling, those middle-level leadership positions as well, and women grow along the ladder, competing with other male. So we need to have educated, skilled women that could replace those who have been pioneers in that regard.
That there's also a recognition that we're not moving fast enough. Africa is not going to meet the Sustainable Development Goals or Agenda 2063 if we don't start moving faster, and women are a huge part of the solution.
Women are responsible for 60% of the work done globally, but women earn 10% of income only, and they own only 1% of property. I think in this one sentence lies the very core of the problem.
Africa certainly cannot regress on the efforts to break the glass ceiling and attain better gender equality outcomes. More work needs to be done to close the financing gap that exists for women-led enterprises on the continent. The African Development Bank launched the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa to plug the financing gap between men and women on the continent, which the Multilateral Development Finance Institution estimates to be about $42 billion annually.
So this particular initiative is to really talk about and roll out the AFAWA initiative, which is the Affirmative Finance for women in Africa that we launched at the African Development Bank, which is to mobilize $3 billion specifically for businesses of women. And I'm so excited. We have delegates from all across the world. We have all the multilateral development banks globally represented here, several of the big banks in Africa that are represented here. But the agenda is simple. How do we make sure we mobilize $3 billion specifically for businesses of women?
And we aim to leverage all of our tools at the African Development Bank to increase women's access to finance. Now, what we launched yesterday is AFAWA's latest innovation. Basically, what we realized is there's a number of market failures. Women are perceived as riskier. It's a risk, it's a perceived risk, not a real risk, but they're perceived as riskier. And because of that, because most of the time they don't have traditional collateral, so they don't get access to finance, they don't get access to credit, or they get crazy interest rates. Second issue, banks don't really understand most of the women market segments, right? Especially the ones that are working in the informal sector where we don't have data. And why would they? There's no incentive for them to go the extra mile and trying to understand their that market, as long as they still have pipeline of other businesses. We also have an issue of capacity on the women's side because many of them have thriving businesses, but not necessarily the financial and business acumen to put together business plans that are receivables by commercial banks. And the third piece is the legal and regulatory frameworks that right now prevent women's participation in private sector, such as land rights, property rights. We have countries where we still can't open a bank account without the authorization of our fathers or husbands. So these are all of the issues. So we looked at it and said, how can we build something that has a systemic impact? And we came up with this program that we launched yesterday. So it's based on 3 pillars, simple. Number 1, access to finance will guarantee women. So if you have a good business and you're going into an AFAWA bank, even if you don't have collateral, the bank will be your backup, will back you up. Number 2, up to 75%, which has never been done before on the continent. Number 2 is the technical assistance. Technical assistance to the banks so that they disaggregate the data, so that they develop the right product to respond to women's specific needs and make money on it and realize it's a bankable segment and that there's a business case for them to be involved so we can influence that behavior. At the same time, capacity building for women so that they can indeed, in turn, respond to the commercial bank's requirements and speak that language, speak the banker's language, put it this way. And the third piece is the enabling environment. We'll be working directly with governments and regulators to change those laws and to support the reforms that are needed in order to ensure that tomorrow, or at least 5 years from now, hopefully at the end of this first cycle of the program, we can get out of the way because the system itself will have changed and the markets will have been tilted in favor of women. So we're very grateful because this whole year we've mobilized support from around the world.
The African Development Bank also signed a series of letters of intent with some financial institutions to drive the AFAWA initiative.
This particular one which we signed today was between the Africa Guarantee Fund and one of the bank which serves the northern part of the continent, Atu Jariwafa. And the bank has a group of companies covering over 11 countries, including Tunisia, Morocco, Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, and so forth. And the intention there is to make sure that we leverage over $50 million for the purposes of making sure that they serve the small and medium enterprises. And in this particular one, they will ensure that it reaches women-owned and managed enterprises in that part of the country. It is a symbolic gesture, connotating that now we are into it. Now we are into making sure that the Africa Guarantee Fund, a fund which has been supporting SMEs, is also directing its efforts towards making sure that women access credit from commercial financial institutions. We will bundle together this $50 million guarantee fund together with capacity development, and we will try to support the financial institutions which had difficulties in articulating how they should set women. But part of that capacity development will also go to the beneficiaries side and make sure that we make the women SMEs credit ready to receive loans and be up to it in terms of repayment.
What we just did was to sign a partnership agreement with African Development Bank on the AFAWA project. And basically that is to increase the amount of financing that goes to women. There is a partnership with African Guarantee Fund. They will provide 75% guarantee to the lenders. And the idea is to make lenders do more for the women.
Yes, we are involved in this AFAWA initiative for a very long time. We think that it's a great idea to facilitate access for women to financial services. So as we got the presidency of the chairmanship of the G7 countries, we have done a lot of meetings at ministerial level and a summit in Biarritz last August. And at this summit we managed to foster support for our initiative at the level of $250 million. And among these, there are half of it coming from French pockets, so about 130. And here in Kigali, this was an opportunity to see where we are in this initiative and also get some more support from other countries.
The Global Gender Summit in Kigali was packed with an impressive lineup of events. The summit saw the launch of the Africa Gender Index. McKinsey & Company also launched the Power of Parity in Africa report, among others. But the visual presence of the fashion entrepreneurs who brought life to the Kigali Convention Center was one to remember, as they were instrumental to the launch of the African Development Bank's Fashionomics Africa Digital Marketplace. Some of the fashion entrepreneurs shared their experience at the summit.
So my business is based in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. I'm the creative director and founder of the company. It's Mafi. It was really interesting, meeting new people, selling your stuff, and it's not only about like fashion shows or whatever. People would actually come and touch and feel your products and buy, and we're building customer bases within Africa. So it's been awesome. We're like kind of sold out. So it's good. The dream is to build really international brand with quality, values, with story and people, and take it to global. Like something, I want the next big Chanel and whatever kind of big brands to come from Ethiopia or Africa. So that's the dream. I want Mafi to be in that level.
So my name is Sarah Legrand. My business, I have a brand of jewelry called Katsobe, and it's jewelry made in silver or brass or also natural materials sometimes. Yeah. My dream, it will be that Katsobe will be in different countries, first of all in Africa, and then Europe also, and America, why not? Yeah.